All right, so we're diving deep today. You've been looking into instrumental transcommunication, and let me tell you, the research you sent over is something else. This isn't like playing with a Ouija board. We're talking about actual technology, maybe, potentially, used to talk to, well.
It's wild, the amount of different ways people are trying to do this.
Yeah.
Like every time some new gadget comes out, someone is figuring out how to use it to try and talk to spirits.
Yeah, I was reading that even Thomas Edison, the Thomas Edison, was obsessed with trying to build a device to talk to the dead. If a genius like him was interested, I mean, come on.
It really makes you wonder, right? Like, what did he know? Of course, there's no proof that he actually, succeeded or anything. But the fact that he was even thinking about this stuff, it's amazing. It says a lot about how much people have always wanted to connect with the afterlife. But to really get ITC, we need to go back, like way back.
Okay, so take us back. Where does this all start?
Okay, imagine it's the 1960s. This Latvian psychologist, Konstantin Radiv, he starts recording all these weird voices, sounds that seem to be coming from, well, somewhere else. He thought they were the voices of the dead, captured on tape.
So that's it, huh? Those early recordings, that's where the whole ITC thing really gets going?
Pretty much. And as technology got better, from those old tape recorders to, well, all the crazy stuff we have now, the ways people try to do ITC, that changed too.
Okay, let's get into it then. What are some of the most popular techniques, the tools people are using?
I'm sure you've heard of EVP, electronic voice phenomena. Capturing voices, spirit voices, hidden in white noise. Some people, they even use special frequencies or audio filters to try to isolate the messages.
Man, that always creeps me out. Thinking about all those faint voices hiding just below the surface.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the easier ways to try ITC. Anyone can grab a recorder and give it a shot. But there are other tools out there, like spirit boxes. They are designed for real-time communication.
I've always wanted to try one of those. You see them everywhere in paranormal investigations. What makes them so special?
Imagine you've got this box that rapidly scans through radio frequencies. It creates this jumble of sound. The theory is that spirits can mess with those frequencies, form words. Some people even build their own boxes, try to make the communication clearer.
So it's like they're trying to grab a message as it flies by. That's wild.
Totally. And then there's visual ITC. Takes things to a whole other level. It uses TVs, computer monitors, things like that to try to capture, well, images.
That's where things get really freaky. I've heard stories about faces, even like full apparitions, showing up on static screens.
There are a couple ways people do this. Some think spirits can, manipulate the static on an unused channel. Others use feedback loops, with cameras and monitors, to create a space for the images to appear.
Like they're trying to break through the static, reach out from, whatever is on the other side.
Right. And then there's computers, software. It's a digital world. Of course, ITC is adapted too. There's software out there designed just for this.
Yeah.
To communicate with, it uses algorithms, generates random words, images. Then people try to figure out what it means.
It's like a high-tech seance. And some of these programs they're pretty complicated, right?
Oh, yeah. There's one called Direct Radio Voice. DRV. Really tricky. You have to tune a radio to a silent frequency, listen for, whispers, hidden messages in the static.
Sounds like you need a good ear and a lot of patience.
Definitely not easy. But that's what makes ITC so fascinating, All these different techniques, it shows how much we want to push the boundaries, to connect with the unknown.
Like it's built into us, this urge to reach across, well, wherever they are. But it's one thing to have the tools. It's another to know what's really going on. What about the science? Is there any proof that any of this works?
Well, that's where things get interesting. We might need a whole other deep dive for that.
I guess that's for part 2. I'm hooked already. We'll be right back after this to explore the science behind all of this.
It's a wild ride. So ready to get into the science of ITC? It can get pretty out there.
Hit me with it. What are some of the theories, that try to explain what's happening?
One of the most interesting ones has to do with quantum particles.
Yeah.
And how spirits might be able to, manipulate them.
Okay, now we're getting into some serious sci-fi stuff. Quantum physics is already mind-blowing enough. How does it connect to ITC?
Well, think about it. Quantum physics deals with the smallest pieces of reality. And some of this stuff is so bizarre it doesn't even make sense, like quantum entanglement, where two particles, no matter how far apart they are, they're linked. If you change one, the other changes instantly.
So maybe spirits are operating on this quantum level outside of normal time and space.
Exactly. Maybe they can use that entanglement to connect somehow with our world And maybe that connection, that's what we see in ITC.
Whoa. So you're saying that all that static and noise, it could be quantum interactions with, the other side.
It's a possibility, right?
Yeah.
It's a really intriguing idea. And it opens up a whole new way of thinking about how ITC might actually work.
Definitely something to think about. But what about the idea that it's not spirits at all? That it's our own minds creating these things? You mentioned psychokinesis before.
Yeah, human psychokinesis. That's another theory people are looking into. The idea that our subconscious minds, thoughts, our emotions, they could be messing with the devices.
So we're accidentally making those spooky voices and images ourselves, just with our minds.
It sounds crazy, I know. But think about the placebo effect. When people believe something will work, and then it does, if our minds can affect our bodies, why not electronics too?
Interesting. It makes you think about how powerful our beliefs can be.
Right. And maybe that's why ITC can feel so personal. It's tapping into our deepest fears, desires that need to connect with people we've lost.
It's like our inner world is leaking out into these devices. It's kind of beautiful and kind of terrifying.
It is. It makes you question what's real, what's inside and what's outside.
Okay, so we've talked about quantum spirits and the power of our minds, but we got to talk about the skeptics, right? What did they say about ITC?
Well, skeptics are always looking for the most down-to-earth explanation. And one of their main arguments is that a lot of ITC stuff can be explained by plain old interference.
Like a random radio signal or some kind of electromagnetic field messing with the equipment.
Exactly. Electronic devices, they're sensitive. They pick up all sorts of weird stuff, especially older devices, which people tend to use for ITC a lot.
Makes sense. They might also say the devices themselves are just malfunctioning, causing those creepy sounds and images.
Right. Sometimes the simplest answer is the right one, but there's another skeptical argument. It has to do with, how our brains work.
You're talking about pareidolia, right? Seeing faces in the clouds, hearing voices and random noise.
That's it. Our brains, they're pattern-seeking machines. They want to make sense of things, even when there's no sense to be made. So maybe what ITC people think are messages, it's just our brains trying to find meaning in static.
We want to believe, right? We want there to be something more out there.
It's that human need to connect.
Yeah.
To find purpose. And even if we never get definitive proof, that's what keeps us searching, keeps us exploring.
It's the mystery itself that keeps us going.
It is. And that's the beauty of ITC. It keeps us questioning, keeps us open to new ideas. But talking about all this, it makes me think about the real-life impact, how ITC affects people, especially those trying to connect with loved ones.
It must be so powerful for people who are, grieving, looking for answers. Let's talk about that side of it, the human stories. What are some of the real-life encounters, the cases that have come out of ITC research?
That's where it gets really personal.
Yeah.
And sometimes, really sad. So we talked about the tech, the theories, all that stuff. But what about the people? The stories that make this, so interesting?
Yeah, that's what really gets me. Those times when it seems like we're actually touching something beyond, something we can't explain.
There was this one case, really stuck with me. This woman, Sarah, she was messing around with EVP up in her attic. She always felt like a weird presence up there, One day she sets up a recorder, asks, "Is anyone there?" Just like that.
Man, I can already feel the chills. What happened when she played it back?
At first, nothing. Silence. Then this faint whisper, barely audible. She amplified it, and it was voice saying, "Help me." Clear as day.
Whoa. That would freak me out. Did you ever find out, who it was?
She started digging into the history of the house and found out that years ago, this young girl, she died in a fire.
Yeah.
Up in that attic.
So it wasn't just her imagination. Maybe it was the girl's, spirit or something stuck there.
It makes you wonder, right, if places can hold on to energy, memories, and maybe some spirits they can't let go.
It's like they're reaching out across time, trying to connect. Sad, but also pretty amazing.
It is. And it's not that unusual, hearing about people getting specific information, details they couldn't have known during ITC sessions.
Okay, now you've got me hooked. Tell me about one.
There was this team investigating an old prison, classic haunted prison, right? They were using a spirit box focusing on this one cell block where this infamous inmate had been held.
Can't go wrong with a haunted prison. I bet you could hear the chains rattling.
So they're scanning through the frequencies, and suddenly this voice booms out. Loud and clear, "My name is William."
I'm guessing William was the inmate.
He was. But here's the creepy part. The voice then says a date. July 18th, 1889.
Okay, that's way too specific. What does that date mean?
Turns out it was the exact date William was executed. The researchers, they had no idea. They hadn't mentioned anything about it during the session. So where did that info come from?
Wow, it's like they tapped into some hidden archive or something, like knowledge that exists outside of, our normal time.
That's the thing about ITC. There are these moments, these glitches in reality. They make you rethink everything.
The more we learn, the more we realize how much we don't know.
Exactly. And yeah, there were always going to be skeptics. But for those of us who've seen this stuff firsthand, it's hard to just brush it off. It's all about exploring, pushing the limits of what we think is possible.
It's a journey, right?
It is, and that's what I love about ITC. It makes us confront those big questions, life and death, the mysteries of the universe. And it forces us to be open to the idea that there might be more out there, way more than we can imagine.
So to everyone listening, keep that curiosity alive. Keep asking questions. Keep searching. Who knows what we might discover?
Maybe someday, with the right tools and an open mind, we'll finally figure out how to really bridge that gap between our world and whatever lies beyond.